Okay, so in this unit, it's about transformations. We started with translation, which I said it was the first transformation we're going to learn. That's when we move things over. Then we also talk about reflection. Remember, I talked about a mirror line. You have to reflect across a mirror line. Now we're going to add what we call rotation. Rotation is when things are going to start spinning. Let's say this is the original point. I'm going to start with the letter R. I'm going to show you guys rotation with the letter R because that way it's easy to see. I can go clockwise or counterclockwise. Clockwise means I'm going with the clock. And to make these things easier, I'm going to go every 90 degrees. So this is where I start. I'm going to start here. Let me go 90 degrees clockwise. Notice how the letter R rotated. It changed. It's not how it was at the beginning. So that's 90 degrees clockwise. Let me go 90 more. Once again, I'm going clockwise. So that's 180. 180. Once again, I'm going clockwise. Now let me go 90 more. So that's 270 clockwise. And then if I go 90 degrees more, it brings me back to where I started. So that's how it looks like when I'm going clockwise. Now we're also going to be using the word counterclockwise. Counterclockwise means I go against the clock. So you guys see how the clock moves? I'm going against the clock. So this is the starting point. Let me go 90 degrees counterclockwise. So that's 90 degrees counterclockwise. Let me go 90 more. That's 180. Let me go 90 more. That's 270 counterclockwise. And once again, let me go 90 more. It brings me back to the original point. There is one thing I want to emphasize. Moving to this point, having the art how it originally was, and getting to this point, I can either do it 90 clockwise or I can do it 270 counterclockwise. Let me say that again. 90 clockwise is the same thing as 270 counterclockwise. We're going to be using both clockwise and counterclockwise. We're going to be using both cases. Let me give you guys a rule. Let's take a look at the work. This is how the work would look like. So to begin with, let me start by giving you guys rules for special cases. I'm going to be dealing with 90 degrees cases. So let me start dealing with 90 clockwise. So if I have an image that rotates 90 degrees clockwise, 90 degrees clockwise, my X and my Y value are going to switch. In this case, it's going to become the X and the Y value are going to become Y negative X. All I'm saying on that one is the numbers are going to flip. And then the one that was the original X value is going to switch signs. So if it was positive, it becomes negative. But if it was negative, it becomes positive. So for 90 degrees clockwise, XY becomes Y negative X. For 90 degrees counterclockwise, I'm going to abbreviate this. 90 degrees counterclockwise, XY becomes negative Y X. And then for 180, rotation of 180, I'm not going to specify clockwise or counterclockwise because it is the same thing. Rotation of 180, my X and my Y value are going to become negative X, negative Y. Now, let me emphasize a little. 90 clockwise can also be called 270 counterclockwise. 90 degrees with the clock is the same thing as 270 against the clock. 90 degrees counterclockwise can also be called 270 clockwise. These three cases, these special cases, I'm going to be using a lot. So let's take a look. Question number 1. I'm going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So I'm using the second rule, counterclockwise about the origin. So let me get the coordinates as I have them originally. It doesn't matter which order. If I look at the coordinates of V, the coordinates of V to begin with are 2, 0. The coordinates of W are 4, 0. The coordinates of X are 4, -2. And the coordinates of U are 2, -3. Once again, I just got the coordinates the way they are originally. Now, 90 degrees counterclockwise, I know it's going to become -yx. So to begin with, my numbers flip. So I'm just going to call this for V prime. Let me do 0, 2. To begin with, they flip. And then the one value that was the y originally switches signs. So the 0 will become -0, but -0 is the same thing as 0. Right? 0 is the only number that cannot change signs. It cannot be negative. Now for W prime, it's going to become 0, 4. Once again, my numbers flip, and the one that was y originally, 0, switch signs. But once again, 0 cannot switch signs. Now X prime it's going to become 2, 4. Notice how the 2 switch signs, right? It was negative, I switch it to positive. And then U prime is going to become +3, +2. So I see the coordinates that I need for each. For me to graph this, it's easy. I can just plug in my blue points. V prime is the point 0, 2. W prime is the point 0, 4. X prime is the point 2, 4. And U prime is the point 3, 2. If I connect my points, you can see that it looks like I rotated the image 90 degrees counterclockwise. Now for the homework, right, I could ask you guys this on assessment if you have it on paper. I could ask you guys to graph the image, but for homework and online teaching, I'm only going to ask you for the coordinates of a specific point. If I ask you for the coordinates of V prime, all I'm expecting you to type in is the coordinates of V prime. You don't have to type in V prime. Just give me the coordinates of V prime. Don't forget the space after the comma. If I ask you for the coordinates of W prime, just give me the coordinates of the point that I'm asking. That's all I'm doing. For the homework, I'm asking for the coordinates of a specific point. Now let's take a look at question number 2. In my case, I'm going to graph the image. So in my case, let me get the coordinates as they are of all the points. So if I look at point S, as it is, I have the point -2, 5. If I look at my point T, I have 3, 5. If I'm looking at the point U, I have 1, 2. And then my point R, the coordinates are -3, 2. Once again, for the lecture, I'm doing all the points. So I'm going to worry about all the points. In your homework, you will have only 1 point. So worry about that 1 point only. Now, we're going to do rotation 180 about the origin. So rotation 180. Notice I did not specify clockwise or counterclockwise because on rotation 180, it does not matter. All I know, looking at my 3 rules that I gave you, rotation of 180, all I'm going to do is switch the signs. So if I'm looking for S prime, my values are going to be 2, -5. I switched the signs on both. If it was negative, it became positive. If it was positive, it became negative. If I'm looking for the coordinates of T prime, my values are going to be -3, -5. If I'm looking for the coordinates of U prime, I'm going to have -1, -2. And for R prime, I'm going to have 3, -2. Now for the homework, Just give me the coordinates of the point that I'm asking. If I ask for S prime, give me the coordinates of S prime, just type in that. Don't forget the space after the comma. If I'm asking for T prime, the coordinates of T prime, I'm just expecting that. Just give me the coordinates of the point that I'm asking. Now, if I don't give you an image, I just give you the values like questions 3 and 4, the instructions so far are the same. Find the coordinates of the vertices of each figure after the given transformation. On your homework, I'm going to ask you for only one point, for a specific point. Now, for question number 3, I'm going to use the rotation 180. And I know for rotation, I'm only going to switch the signs. The numbers are not going to flip. It's just I'm going to switch the signs. So if I'm looking for J prime, I'm going to have 3, -3. If I'm looking for I prime, I'm going to have 3, -5. Notice I'm just switching the signs on each. If I'm looking for H prime, I'm going to have 1, -4. Here, I gave you the values of all 3 points. On your homework, just give me the coordinates of the point that I'm asking. Question number 4, I have to give the points and also doing rotation of 180. I know rotation 180, all I do is switch the signs. So if I'm looking for D prime, I do -2, -3. If I'm looking at E prime, I have -2, -4. If I'm looking for F prime, I have -5, -5. And lastly, for G prime, -3, -3. I switch the signs on each number. For the homework, once again, I'm going to ask for a specific point. Just give me the coordinates of that point. So it's easy to get the coordinates. Now, moving along, I'm going to ask you guys to give me a rule. So something happened here. We're dealing with rotation today, so rotation is going to happen. So something happened. Once again, we know it's rotation. Now, tell me which rotation happened. We know we start with the black and finish with the blue. The way I know that is because the blue, they all have the little apostrophe. H prime, G prime, F prime, E prime. So the little apostrophe, the prime on each of my letters, lets me know the blue came after. The notation is used a lot because if I was to print this and my printer is only black, you will have 2 images that are black. So the way you will know which one came second is based on the apostrophe. So use the notation. Okay, so here, if I look at my point F and E, they're not good to follow. Now, the reason why is because each of them has a 0 for either X or the Y value. If I look at my point F, my Y value of F is 0. Like I said, a 0 is not good to follow. My point E, my X value on point E is 0. The reason why we don't want to follow 0 is because I don't know if it switches signs or not. So in my case, let me follow my point G. If I look at G, because I'm looking at G, the coordinates of G are -4, -3. -4, -3. Once again, I'm following my point G. Then I look at G prime. Now, G prime, the coordinates of G prime are -3, +4. So the way I'm going to find out what happened, I'm going to look at the letters. And first of all, I ask myself the values. Ignore the signs right now. Did the values switch? The X and the Y values switch. So I see that G, the order was a 4 and there was a 3. For G prime, there's a 3 first and then there's a 4. So I'm going to say, yes, the values did switch. So I'm going to do YX. So the values did switch. I look at the original X value. So my -4. And I ask myself, did that 4 switch signs? It did. So I'm going to put a negative here on the x. Then I look at the original y value and I ask myself, did the y value switch signs? Nope, it's still -3 on both. So I'm looking for the rule that tells me that xy becomes y negative x. I'm looking for the rule that tells me that xy becomes y negative x. We can see it. It's 90 degrees clockwise. You guys can see it there. So that's exactly what I'm going to write. I'm going to write rotation. You do have to type in the word rotation, capital R. So rotation. And then we said in this case it was 90 degrees clockwise. So I'm just going to write 90 clockwise. I'm going to abbreviate for my homework CW for clockwise. That's all I'm going to type. Rotation 90 clockwise. All right, let's take a look at question number 6. Neither of my points is good to follow. I'm going to show you guys why. If I look at my point D, my coordinates of D are 2, 0. If I look at my point C, the coordinates of C are 3, 0. Now, the reason why these points are not good to follow is because they each have a 0. I don't know if the 0 changes signs or not. Now, if I look at my point E, my coordinates of E are 3, -3. The value repeats. It's 3 on both sides, so I don't know if that number switches or not. So I'm going to use a combination. I'm going to use two numbers. I'm going to use two values, 2 points. If I look at D prime, I'm going to use D prime to see if my numbers flip or not. So if I look at the coordinates of D prime, my values are 0, -2. And then I'm going to use the point E prime. E prime is -3, -3. All right, so I'm going to use D to know if my numbers flip or not. So I look at 2, 0 for D, and D prime is 0, -2. So I'd say, well, yep, my numbers did flip. So I'm using D to know if my numbers flip or not. Now that I know that they did flip, I'm going to use point E. I look at the original X value, and I know here it became that. So I look at the original X value, and I said, once again, I know they flipped. So I asked myself, and I said, did my numbers switch sign? Did my X switch signs? It was 3, and it became -3. So yes, the X switch signs. Then I look at the original Y value. Now that one, we can see it. I'm going to use green for that. We can see it here. And I said, did my Y value switch signs? It was negative and it stayed negative. So nope, they didn't switch signs. Then I look for the rules on the top. Which one tells me that XY becomes Y negative X? And you will find out that it's rotation 90 clockwise. You probably could see it. You could probably have seen it before, like, oh yeah, it was 90 degrees clockwise. Now, what if we cannot see it? I'm looking at questions 7 and 8. I'm going to follow point V. The first thing I ask myself is, did the numbers switch order? Ignore the signs. There's a 4 first, and then there's a 2. In both cases, there's a 4 first, and then there's a 2. So I'm going to say, nope, the numbers did not switch order. Then I look at the original X value. I ask myself, did the 4 switch signs? Yep, it did. So let me put a little minus on the X. Then I look at the original Y value. Did the 2 switch signs? It was negative and it became positive. Yes, it did. It did switch signs. Then I look on the rules on the top. You should have them written down. xy becomes negative x, negative y. And we're just going to say that's rotation 180 degrees. 180. I don't have to specify clockwise or counterclockwise because it is the same. Now let's take a look at question number 8. I'm not going to follow point 8. The reason why there's a 0 in it, I don't know if the 0 switches signs or not. So I'm not going to follow point F. In my case, I'm going to follow point G. First of all, I ask myself, did the numbers switch orders? There's a 3 first, and then there's a 4. And then it seems that for G prime is backwards. So yes, my numbers did switch orders. I look at the original X value. Did my 3 switch signs? Nope, it did not. Now I look at my original Y value. Did my 4 switch signs? Yes, it did. So I'm going to put a little minus on the Y. So I know that it did switch signs. So XY becomes negative YX. You will find, according to the rules on the top, we did rotation 90 counterclockwise. So when I ask you guys for a point, give me the coordinates of a point. Just give me the coordinates of the point that I'm asking. I did examples 1 through 4. Now, if I ask you guys for a rule, do notice that each of them, I started with the word rotation. We're dealing with rotation, so it makes sense that all of them start with rotation for today. And then I wrote which rotation it happened. Make sure you guys have this little table to help you guys out.